Okay, beautiful. We're going to start Nun Ches.
Morning.
Good morning. Shalom isn't here.
Okay. Either he will or he don't.
Right. We're going to start Nun Ches Amud Beis by Hechi Shaiminan. It's about 10 lines down. Yeah, what we learned in the Mishnah, let me mute this. First, we thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. And this plus of our learning, we have the Beis Hamikdash. We learned in the Mishnah that the way you evaluate damages that was done to fruits in a field is that you evaluate the field and the difference between with the fruits and without the fruits. So the way it was is you evaluate a base in that field, how much it's worth before, how much it's worth now after the damages. And not the actual fruits. That was a machlekes. If according to Reb Shimon, if the fruits were ripe, then it's the actual fruits. Okay. The Gemara now asks, Heichi Shaminan, how do you evaluate the Beisa? How do you evaluate the property? Do you evaluate it on its own, or do you evaluate the property itself inside a larger property? Right? Maybe if someone's buying the whole block, so then you'll know that maybe the price of that property could be different. So, Rabbi Yosi bar Chanina sa b'shishim shah. So the property itself is evaluated inside 60 properties like it. Wow. So a one sa, a sa is is really a measurement of volume, and it's very good. It's just the amount of 6 kav. Each kav is 24 eggs, so it's the amount of 144 eggs. That's a sa. Now, yeah, a kav is 24 eggs, 2 dozen eggs. Now, what does this have to do with field? Because that's the amount of land that could be sown by this amount of grain. So you measure it. I think a sa was 50 by 50 amas or something. Sasayim was 50 by 100 amas. Anyway, what's happening now is that he damaged one row inside this Beisa, inside this 50 by 50 amas property. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, what's the value of this 50 by 50 property? We're going to evaluate what this 50 by 50 property would be in 60 of such properties. 60 times 50. What's that? 300 something. 3,000. So then, and based on that, that's what we're going to then so basically we're going to do two estimations here. One, what's the price of the field? And then once we get the price of the field, we're going to do what's the price of the loss of the smaller field before the damage and after the damage. Got that? Yeah.
Today they use like 3
properties,
comparables.
No, this is not a comparable. This is, you see, what's happening is that very small fields are sold very expensive. Very large fields are sold much cheaper. Actually, extremely large fields are also sold expensive because it's hard to buy a whole block, a whole thing. So people will pay a lot more if they get the whole thing. And then in the middle, that's would be like the cheapest price. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to, I don't know if it's make it fair or make that the one that caused the damage should not pay so much. We're trying to lessen that. If it would pay for actual fruits, that would be the highest. the retail price. So here we're saying, no, he's going to just pay what the difference in the property is. But how do we estimate that property? That we have to measure it in 60 properties, which that was not like the largest amount. That was a reasonable amount. Okay. Let's take a look. What did we learn so far? We learned Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina sa b'shishim sa. 60 inside 60. Okay. Next opinion is Rabbi Yana Yamar Tarkev b'shishim tarkevim. A tarkev is a half a sa. The reason is because a tarkev is trey v'kav. That's the word tarkev, trey v'kav, which means it's 3 kavim. Remember, a sa was 6 kavim. Yeah, so what's this going to be? What's half of 144? It's going to be 72. So 72, this is going to be, we're on Nun Ches. This is going to be approximately the size 72 eggs. And that's the size of the field that we're going to measure the damage on. And then we're going to get the value of that field based on that in 60 such fields. Together with that. Rabbi Yanai says that 60 sa, that large, very large field that Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina was talking about, that's going to be sold way too cheap. He says that's more common, that's going to be the more average price. Average person would buy that, and okay. Okay. Now, the last opinion has his totally own view. He says that there's really only one estimation, and that's Chizki Amar Kelach b'shisha klachim. That's what you just do is you take exactly what it ate and you times it by 60, and you see what the loss would be if this was missing in 60 of those stalks. So you don't have to do 2 estimations according to Chizkiah. According to the first 2 opinions, Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina and Rabbi Yana, you have to estimate it twice. Right? You got to first get the price of the field, and then you get in the price of the field, you get what this loss would be. According to this third opinion, you just do the estimation of what this loss would be if there would be 60 such stocks with this amount missing. Basically, the Gemara has a question: if the animal ate 1 kav or 2 kav, again, a kav is about 24 eggs, so 24 or 48 eggs worth of fruits. And we don't say that you have to pay for their price what it would cost retail. Rather, we view it as if it's an entire row of produce. And then you evaluate what it was worth and what it's worth now that there's missing kav or missing kabayim. My love, b'fnei sounds like that we're doing this on its own. We're not measuring this in a field of 60 times and all of that. We're just measuring 1 row. Says loy b'shishim. Actually, he didn't spell it out, but it really means that we're measuring that row in a field of 60 times that. Now, each one could answer this according to the way he wants to. You can answer it. It's in 60 times the tarkev, 60 times the sa, or 60 times the kalachim, whatever it is. But it's not they'll figure out how to answer this up, as long as you don't take it literal. Rabbi Naftali, you have a question?
No, I'm all right. Thank you.
Okay. You don't measure it just the kav, because it's going to increase the price. Below base score, you don't measure a base score. Now, a base score is a massive property. Base score is, well, actually, a base score is only 30 sa. It's not so big. 60 sa we were dealing with bigger than that. This is like a tarket. 60 target would be a base score. Play base score because that's making it too cheap. My Kamar, what is it? What are you talking about? Amar of Papa explains this price. Achi Kamar. We're gonna have 2 explanations for this price. The first is Rav Papa. Ein shaman kav b'shishim kavim. You don't do a kav in 60 kavim, because the mazik, the damager, is going to have to pay. Will pay hardly anything, because 60 kavim is a cheap field. He says like this: it's too big for a poor person to buy, and it's too small for anyone else. So it sort of like doesn't really have a market, and so such a strange size field is going to be sold cheaper. Nishtahin nishtaher, right? And it's not a core in 60 core because this is going to be way too expensive, because 60 cores, that's a massive amount. That's 60 times 30. So, right? This is a massive amount. Now, this is going to be way too expensive. Such a field is going to be overpriced. Like we said, this whole block is for sale. So then people would pay even extra to be able to get the full block. So, so this is going to end up being each field. What we're going to do is we're going to estimate twice over here, right? We're going to get the price of the field, and then we're going to estimate what it's now worth, missing the fruits or with the fruits. So first we have to get the price of the field. How are we getting the price of the field? He says you're going to measure it by this massive amount. This is going to be way too expensive, and then the loss is going to be too much. The mazik, the damager, is going to lose out. Maskevlo Ravuna Bar Manayach. Ravuna Bar Manayach has a question. Says, I like how you're translating the brisa, but it doesn't fit with the brisa. It says, hi, v'loi base kor, v'loi kor mi ba'ilai. Doesn't, it says, you're saying that you're measuring a core in 60 kurim. Where did you get the 60 kurim from? It says v'loi base core, just as a base core, which is one area of a core. You see, the interesting thing is, it says ein shamin kav, and then it says instead of base kav, it says kav. You don't measure the kav. And then it says instead of a core, it says a base core. So it's like inconsistent over there. So let's see how he explains it. He says, Ella Ravuna Bar Menachem Shmida Ravach B'Der Ravika Hachiktani. He learns it differently. He says, Ein shamin kav b'fnei atzmai. You can't just measure a kav on its own, one kav, because that's going to be just like a retail price. How much a kav is worth of the fruits that got damaged, it's going to be what it cost in the store. The mazik, the damager, is going to pay too much. Like kav a base core, and you also don't measure a kav inside a base core. They should pay him because he's going to get too little. Ela b'shishim. Rather, you measure a kav in 60 kavim, and now you're going to have to figure out, according to each opinion, how to measure that. Is that in a besa, or is it in a basically times 60? Okay, Hahu Gavra. There was a person. The cuts kashba michavri. He cut down a palm tree from his friend. Went into his friend's field and cut it down. I don't know why he did that, but he did it. So Asalakami de Reish Galusa. Reish Galusa was sometimes considered like the judge of the town. Reish Galusa is the exilarch. He was the head of the community. It's like the mayor or something, the Jewish mayor. So the president of the show, right? So Asalakami de Reish Galusa. Do we have a president? Is there a show president? Are you the president? Oh, Mr. President. Okay. So Asalakami de Reish Galusa. They came to for the Reish Galusa. Amalei, the Reish Galusa says, you know what? I actually saw that tree that you cut down. I know exactly where it is. I know what it looks like. Talsa Bekina Habekaimi. I don't know exactly what those three words mean. There were three Talsa. There were three Talsa Bekina. I guess it means that there were three trees in one. Rashi translates it. One next to the other. I don't know exactly what kina means in Talsa. I'm not sure what that means. But there were 3 trees that were growing together. And they were worth altogether 100 zuz. The Reish Galusa is saying, I know exactly what it is. I looked it up on Zillow. And Zil Havle Tlasinu Tlasa Vitilsa. Go pay him because it's worth 100 zuz. Go pay him 33 and a third. Because he cut one of the 3, so it's 33 and a third. Amar, so the fellow says, Gabi Reish Galusa, the Dandina de Parsai Lamali. What do I need a Reish Galusa that judges like the Persian in the Persian courts? Asalakami de Rav Nachman, so he went to Rav Nachman. Amalei, Rav Nachman says, Beshishim. What we have to do is we have to evaluate if there was a field that had 60 palm trees and you cut one of them, what was it worth before and what's it worth now? So we're going to measure the whole thing as a field. As if it was an animal that was damaging. Amalei Rava says, Imama Beniski Memaina Yamra Beniski Gufai. Is that the way you measure when a person causes damage? That's the way you measure when an animal causes damage. When an animal goes in and eats in someone's property, so okay, the guy didn't do it himself. It was his animal. But we make him pay because there was a loss. So how do we estimate it? We estimate it on 60. We're like a little lenient on the mazik. He didn't go in. It wasn't it wasn't attempting, it wasn't deliberately causing damage. He didn't watch his animal, so we're easy on him. We measure it by 60. But this guy deliberately caused damage. Why are we going easy on him? That's Rava's claim to Rav Nachman. Amalei Abaye l'Rava. Abaye says to Rava, Beniski Gufim my daitach. What's your opinion when it comes to a person that's actually causing damage deliberately? The Tanya was taught in a brisa. Amavker karme shel chaveri smadar. If someone picks the fruits or destroys the fruits of his friend, smadar, while the grapes are at a very early stage, and they're not edible. What smadar is that right after the fruit blossom, right after there's a blossom, right when the blossom falls off, so you're left with this little tiny bud under the flower. It's a little tiny bud. There's nothing you can do with that. That you have to wait till it grows before it's anything. It's just really it's not the wood, but it's the earliest stage of the fruit. If someone destroys those smadar, so Rayin I say Kamma Yafa Kamma V'Koydem L'Chein V'Kamma Yafa L'Achrikim. You measured how much it was worth before, when it had the flowers on it, when it had and how much it's worth now, afterwards, now that it's been destroyed. V'ilu b'shishim like tani, but it doesn't say that you measure in 60. Now, what's he telling him? Is Abaye telling Rava? Is your opinion that since it doesn't say 60 in this brisa, that means that you have to pay for it actually as it is right now, just for the actual damage? But what does it say by the milaitanya kiagavna, by an animal? It says exactly the same thing. The Tanya was taught in a brisa, kitmanatia. Let's say an animal uproots a sapling. You planted the sapling, you're hoping that it's going to grow, you're going to get something from it. But now the animal uprooted it. Rabbi Yossi says, this Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta, student of Rabbi Akiva. He says that those that made decrees in Yerushalayim, which we happen to know their names from Ksubas, Admain and Chanan ben Avshalom was the name. They said that such a damage is Netia Bashnasa. If the sapling is in its first year, then it's worth shtei kesef. 2 kesef. I don't know what a kesef is. I'm not sure. Does it say 2 ma or 2 sela? What is a kesef? What does the English say? What is it? 2 ma. 2 ma. Okay, it's a small amount. I think there were, how many ma was in a sela? I think maybe there were 4 ma in a sela or something. It's a small amount. Bashtei shanim. But if it's 2 years old, then it's arba kesef. Then it's 4 ma. Okay. Because every year it gets worth more because it's growing bigger. It's closer to giving the fruit and all of that. Achla chaziz. Let's say an animal ate this is called shachas. It's called what they would do is they would grow the wheat 1/3, then they would cut it down, and then they would let it grow again. And that first cutting would be what they would give to the animals. But anyway, in this instance, the animal came and uprooted it at a 1/3 stage. Okay, at this early stage. So anyway, Rabbi Yossi Aglili Aimer, Rabbi Yossi Aglili is a friend and student of Rabbi Akiva, says Nidin b'Mashiach Shabbat. He says you have to measure it by its future, since this is going to turn into wheat. So really, what you did is you destroyed the wheat. Ooh, what was this? There was an expression about this. Someone mentioned before. I think Professor, you might have mentioned. You measure the loss of the seed by the tree, by all the tree that was going to grow and all the fruits or something. Now, he's saying that because it was ready to grow, was already 1/3 grown, you're going to measure it by what it was going to be in the future. How much the property is worth? How much the property, how much it was worth, and how much the property is worth now? Okay. So we're looking now according to the Chachamim at the property. Let's say this is the grape that we mentioned before, that the bud, the flower has fallen off, and now it's at its very earliest stage of development. Rabbi Yeshua says you have to view it, how much it's going to be worth, which is basically what Rabbi Yossi Aglili said, right? But Rabbi Yossi Aglili said that about the grain, about the stalks of grain. Rabbi Yeshua says that about the grapes, that it was going to turn into full grapes. The Chacham say, let's look at the field, how much the field was worth and how much it's worth now. Reb Shimon ben Yehuda, Reb Shimon ben Yehuda says in the name of Reb Shimon, which is Reb Shimon bar Yochai, says, when do we say this? In other words, when are we going to look at it as the field? That's only if it ate. Lulve Gefanim are the new shoots of the branches, and Yichuri Te'enim are the new shoots of, well, Gefanim are the grapevines, and Te'enim are the figs. Yeah. So, but we're talking about where there's new branches there, but you don't even have the blossoms. But if it ate the pagim is like a second stage of the fruit development. It's not the smother. Smother is the lowest. Pagim is the second stage of the figs, and baisar is the second stage of the grapes. It's at that stage it's more sour. It gets sweeter. They measure it in bricks. They call it bricks, the sweetness in the fruits. So yeah, it doesn't have the sweetness yet. The more ripe it gets, the sweeter it gets. It's mushy. It's like really sweet. It's like becomes too sweet. You don't want it. You like it when it's firm, and so the animals like it very sweet. They like it mushy. People like it. According to, he says, if that's the case, this is Reb Shimon ben Yehuda named Reb Shimon, you have to view it as if it's already fully developed, because it was going to be developed, right? As if it was ready to be harvested. And look at the loss that he did. Katani Mias, whatever the case is, we learned. The Chachamim, the sages say, so you told me, this is Abaya telling Rabba, what are you saying? That you're not going to say shishim because if a man causes damage, the brisa doesn't say shishim? Well, guess what? In the brisa that talks about the animal, it also doesn't say shishim. Elamai, Maya Stachlaman, what are you going to say? B'shishim. It doesn't say shishim 60 times, that you have to measure it in a field that's 60 times. It says it doesn't say it over there, so but it doesn't matter. Just because it didn't say it doesn't mean that's not what it's referring to. You have to add it in. Okay, so if you add it in by the animal, you can also add it in for the person, which basically means that Rav Nachman's psak on this person, that you measure it in 60 palm trees, is actually accurate according to Abaya. Amar Abaya. Abaya says, Rabbi Yossi Aglili, Rabbi Shmuel, Amar Davarecha. Rabbi Yossi Aglili, where did we have Rabbi Yossi Aglili? He was the one that said that if an animal eats the stalks before they're fully developed, you have to pay for it as if it is fully developed. And Rabbi Yishmael say the same thing. Bishmal is earlier. Now, this is called, when they do this, this is called Shita. Abaya is the most common to do this. And he does this sometimes with 3, 8, many, sages will put them all together. I'll say they all hold the same thing. Turns out that they don't all hold exactly this. They don't happen to agree with each other. They just have the same line of thinking. And usually the halacha is the like Yeshita. It's not like this. So even though he's lining them up, it's really lining them up for not to have the halacha like them. Anyway, Rabbi Yossi Glili, as we said, that he says that you Rabbi Shmuel Amidavrach, Rabbi Yossi Glili Hadam, and Rabbi Yossi Glili, we mentioned that you view the stalks as what they would be in the future. Rabbi Shmuel, the Tanya Rabbi Shmuel, as it says in a brisa, Meitav Sadeh Meitav Karmi Yishale, and we had this before. It says, pay the best of his field, the best of his vineyard is what he pays for the damage. Meitav Sadeh Shal Nizik, Meitav Karmi Shal Nizik. The best of the Nizik's field, that means the one that got damaged, and the best of the Nizik's vineyard. Rabbi Shmuel, that's what Rabbi Shmuel says. We'll see in a moment what that means. Rabbi Akiva says no. What it means is that when the Nizik is coming to collect, or when someone that had damage is coming to collect, you take the Mazik's best field. He can get from his best property. He doesn't give him from his worst property, from the rocky terrain. He gives him the lush, most productive land, most expensive. The apartment in Manhattan, not the one in Wyoming. Okay. What is that?
We'll prefer Wyoming.
Yeah, but price-wise, the easiest to sell.
So the one in Manhattan and buy it halfway Wyoming.
Right. So Kavachem LaHegdish, and for sure if it causes damage to Hegdish, that's what he's going to have to pay the best. Okay, now Abaya goes on. That don't translate Rabbi Shmuel the way that Ravidi Baravin does. Ravidi Baravin, Dam Ravidi Baravin, Kensha Achla Aruga Ben Arugas. Ravidi Baravin, he says, what are you talking about that you collect from the Nizik's field, from the best of the Nizik's field? How do you collect from the best of the Nizik's field? Nizik, he's the guy that got damaged. What do you mean collecting the best? So Ravidi Baravin explained that one row got eaten, but since the row was eaten, we don't know what the row was. We don't have the cameras that tell us what used to be growing there, because the animal ate the whole thing up. So the Amar, we say Kum Shlim Shmena, the Meitav. He has to pay the most thick, most productive field, the Meitav Dikahashta, from the best that he has right now. Rabbi Abaya says the Hachilayam Nidan. We don't say that. My time, what's the reason? When we mentioned this before, we said the same thing. He said, this is on Davav Hamad Beis or Dav Zion. It's because you can't charge him for more than what he took. You're just making an assumption here that it was so productive, but you don't know that. So Ella, rather, what he means, what he means is that you have to pay what it's going to be in the future. That's what Rabbi Shmuel means. This is not the way we explained it back on Davav. Davav, we explained it that if you have the Mazik has a field that's equivalent to the Nizik's Idius, that would be good enough. Even though the Mazik has even better fields, Rabbi Shmuel holds that you don't have to pay the Mazik's best, the damager's best. You only have to pay what would be considered the best in the Nizik's level. That's the way we learned it before. And the Rabbi Akiva held that you have to pay the Mazik's best. That was the Machlekes. Nizik, the Idius, the Mazik, or Idius, the Nizik. Anyway, over here, Abaya is learning it that it has to do with we're going to estimate it what it's going to be in the future. Okay. What is that? Kihech the Salik, what it's going to be when you actually harvest it, what's it going to be worth? That's how much he has to pay. Salik means when it's removed. Amar Mar, this is an expression that's used to go back when we explain a brisa that we discussed in passing. Then we're going to go back to discuss it a little more. Master taught. Who's the master? Whoever we're going to quote is the master. Rab Shimon ben Yehuda Amar Mishum Rab Shimon. Shimon, he says neighbor Rab Shimon, when do we say that you measure it on top of a land? And we say how much the land used to be worth and how much it's worth now. That's only if it ate the new shoots of the fig tree or the new shoots of the grapevine. Hasmadar. But if there was already small buds, the grapes were already starting to be there. It was like the tiniest grape. Then then we're going to look at it as if it's already fully developed, and we're going to measure it like that, because he didn't say that you measure it on as part of the property if there's already those small grapes on it. He only said if it's the shoots. It's mashma knows the diuk from that. What the implication that comes out of that is that if it's already a grape, then we're going to look at it as it is in the future. It's fully developed. Let's go further. If he ate the second stage of grapes, not the first stage, the second stage, then then we look at it as if it's fully developed. But if it's at the first stage, right when the blossom falls off, then we're going to look at it as it is attached to the field. So what he's doing here is he's asking, the Gemara is asking that it's the Yukim Saisrim. The implications are contradictory. From the first case, from the first statement, it implies that smadar is going to be considered a fruit. From the second statement, it implies that smadar is considered part of the tree. You view it as attached to, as part of the field. So the implication from the first statement to the second statement contradicts. Not the statements themselves. The statements themselves are fine, but what each one implies is a contradiction. Amar Ravina says, Krech Vatani. We're going to have to mush these two together, these two statements, and then we'll be able to come out with something that won't be contradicting. When do we say that he has to pay as it is, as attached to the field? That's only if he ate the new shoots. We'll add smother into that second stage. Whether the first stage of the fruit. So the second stage of the fruits, then then we're going to look at it as if it's fully developed, and it's going to pay what it would cost in the future. Now that was the opinion of Reb Shimon ben Yehuda that says in the name of Reb Shimon. He said, now the statement before was Rabbi Yeshua. He says that if he eats smadar, then you have to pay as it is in the future. The problem is what happened right now is based on our answer, we have both Reb Shimon ben Yehuda and Rabbi Yeshua saying that if it ate smadar, which is that first stage of development in the grapes, you have to pay what it is in the future. Gemara says, Reb Shimon ben Yehuda, Hainu Rabbi Yeshua. It's exactly the same opinion. They both hold that smadar is looked at as it is in the future. Gemara says the difference is that if you leave the fruits on, it weakens the vine. You do it because you want to get the produce, but the fact is that the vine gets weaker. If you want to strengthen the vine, you would take all the fruits off and let it just grow, and the vine itself would get strengthened. So there is a little bit of weakness in the vine because the fruits are there. Now, because this damaging ox or sheep or whatever it was came in, what would eat the grapes? Fox, right? Fox eats the grapes. This damaging animal came in and took the fruits off. So because of that, the vine gets a little stronger. So now I have to subtract from the payment that he owes for the damage that he did to the grapes. I have to subtract the benefit that the owner of it got, that his vines are now improved, because there would have been a weakening of the vines, but now there's a strengthening of the vines because he took it off. So even though it's more damage than improvement, but nevertheless I have to decrease a little bit from the damage because he actually gained a little bit. Now, who holds what? The Gemara says v'lei mesaimi, but we don't know who holds what. We just know that there's a machlekes here, but we don't know who holds what. We just know that could be a possible difference between these two opinions, Rabbi Yeshua and Reb Shimon ben Yehuda. Abaya says, Masaimi or Masaimi. What are you telling me? We don't know who says what. We know 100% who says what. Masaimi means to conclude. But it didn't conclude who holds what. He says, what do you mean? We're totally clear about this. Because Montana the Chayesh L'Kashkuf. Who holds that we're concerned about the weakening of the vine itself? Who would hold that? Well, Reb Shimon ben Yehuda. It's exactly Reb Shimon ben Yehuda. The Tanya was taught in the Brisa. Reb Shimon ben Yehuda. I'm Reb Shimon ben Manasseh. Now it's Reb Shimon ben Manasseh, not Reb Shimon, which was before Reb Shimon would be Reb Shimon ben Yochai. He says, if a man rapes a woman,
Right.
so Shalom's here. So he has to pay. He has to pay for the damage. He has to pay not for the damage. Well, he has to pay for the damage, but he has to pay a knas. He has to pay what is it? 50 coins, right? He has to pay 50 coins to the father for a nun test. Nun test Amud Aleph. 3 lines from the wide lines. 3 lines down from the wide lines. So we say like this: that if a woman was raped, so because we would think that maybe the rapist should have to pay the pain for the pain that he caused her. So no, he doesn't have to pay for that pain because when she would get married, she would have that pain anyway. Amrullah, they responded to him, but you can't compare the pain someone that's has relations willingly to someone that has by force. Okay. Well, whatever the case is, we see over here that he looks at it that since there was going to be this other pain that was going to come in, so therefore we can subtract that pain from his payment, and like all of this. So he's probably the same one that would say that since there was a benefit to the vine, that because it was able to get stronger, it didn't get weaker because it didn't have the fruits on it. So he would probably be the one that would say that. Because in other words, we look at these little side benefits that exist, and we subtract it from the pain. Yeah.
And the following year,
yeah,
better.
Could be. It makes it stronger. It makes it stronger. Sometimes when they want to grow, like they want to grow very big fruits, they take all the fruits off except for one. That way, all the energy can go to that one fruit. It's strengthened. When you take it off, it's strengthened. They tell you to actually, I think, to take off some of the
Pruning.
They take off. What happens sometimes if the mango is there's too many blossoms, so the tree is not going to hold them all the way through till the end, till they're all going to become full fruits. They say to actually take off some of them so that the ones that are there will hold. Anyway,
This is a little bit like Sidon. When there's an accident, you charge the guy because you let him. Right. So these guys are trying to get this guy off the hook, right?
Yeah.
For damaging.
Professor says it sounds like Saddam, where he throws a rock at someone and then he charges him for the bloodletting.
He smashed the skull and all that stuff. Yeah, put it for himself in the future. So I don't get it.
Okay, let's take a look. Amar Abaya. Abaya says, Hani Tanoi, Reb Shimon ben Yehuda, Amar Davar Echad. Says, I actually have more opinions that say the same thing.
Oh.
You're in luck, Professor. Reb Shimon ben Yehuda Adam, and we already said Reb Shimon ben Yehuda's view, which was both by, what do you think? Both by the rapist that doesn't have to pay for the pain, and also the improvement of the vine because he took the grapes off. And but Hani Tanoi, Maihi, what is this when you're telling me that there's a bunch of Tanoim that say the same thing? Where do you get that from? Who are they? The Tanya was started in Brisa. Rabbi Yosi Aimer. Rabbi Yosi says, Naki Chaya. We say that when I think this is talking about when 2 men are fighting and they hit a woman and the fetus comes out, so they have to pay for the value of the fetus. Now, turns out that because there was a miscarriage here, the husband doesn't have to pay for the midwife to come. So there's a little bit of a gain because you don't have to pay. So you pay for the fetus, but you subtract the midwife fee.
What about the bris and the bar mitzvah and the marriage? Saves them a lot of trouble. What? Yeah, shiva expenses.
They're suggesting over here we should take off the future tuition as well.
Okay.
College. No, you should actually make money.
Medical school.
You should pay him. Okay. Now you have to take off the food. Now this is not talking about the food that the child would have eaten. This is talking about the food that the mother would need to eat extra because when she's pregnant and she's in labor, she has to have extra food, and you have to take that off because you didn't have to go through that. Right, exactly. That's why we're bringing this in. Mandam or Naki Chaya, the one that says that you have to take off the midwife. Kolshkin Naki Mizayin. So you have to take off the extra food because that was just for the woman herself. Mandam or Naki Mizayinas, am I missing? Mandam or Naki Mizayinas, the one that says that you take off the food. Aval Naki Chaya loy. But you don't take off for the midwife. Damar lay, because he says it's a didik bekichi v'lay mibayich chaya. She does a unassisted birth.
No midwife.
She's a pekicha. She can do a birth on her own. They don't like anyone there. I know someone like this. They don't want anyone there when they give birth. They're like, no, don't interfere. I can do this on my own. Okay.
This is assuming that she's had prior.
Possibly. Very independent people are like this.
Hospital costs too. Save on
Hospital costs, right? Rav Papa, Rav Huna Breder, Rav Yeshua, Rabbi Shapiro, I heard him say once that he would have said that it's prohibited to have a home birth or something like that because of the risk. There's potential risk, it should be in a hospital. But he heard the Rebbe one time saying in a sikha something about how it's a natural thing for women to give birth and it's not sakana or something, something like. He said, okay, it's in olden days that's how everyone. They didn't rush to the hospital, but there was also issues that would come up. Anyway, okay, so he leaves it up to the wife, whatever she says. Anyway, Rav Papa, Rav Huna Breder, Rav Yeshua, Avedov. You see, they have to want whatever, or else it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Say I can't give birth there, so then they actually can't. If that's the way they feel, then. Anyway, okay. Rav Papa, Rav Huna Breder, Rav Yeshua. The later Amiraim, they Avid Uvda Kavaseder Rav Nachman B'Shishim. They actually caused they paskin that someone that did a damage, they made him pay with 60 times, even though it was a person doing the damage, exactly the way Rav Nachman said. We're going back to the Gemara before. Lishna Achrina was another version. Rav Papa Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua Shamadikla Agav Katina Da'ara. They measured it on a small piece of land. The halacha is going to be like Rav Papa and Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua when it comes to this weak sort of tree that we're just going to evaluate it on as it is as part of the property, or in 60. And we're going to pass like the Reish Galusa if it was a very productive, a Persian a date palm. Those are very productive. Those you have to evaluate on their own. Those are very good date palms. Eliezer Zeira. There was a fellow, his name was Eliezer Zeira. He was wearing black shoes. In those days, black shoes was something that mourners wore. Today it's Crocs, or they used to have the what they call tennis shoes. They had like a white bottom and a like a canvas, the canvas shoe. That was always what years ago. That's what a mourner would be wearing, those type of shoes. Anyway, in those days it was black.
They call them Converse.
Converse. Converse,
That's what they
right?
call them now.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are the old shoes. They always up a war before they had what's it called? Crocs and stuff. And he was in this marketplace in Nardoi. Ashkachu the Reish Galusa. Well, the people from the house of the Reish Galusa found him. They said to him, Maishna, Hani Misani, what are you wearing those shoes for? Amalahu, he said, Vilna, Yerushalayim. I'm mourning for Jerusalem. Amrulay, At Chashiva Lesabuli Yerushalayim. You're such a hot shot. You're so important that you're mourning for Jerusalem. Sabra Yura Hava. They think that he's just an arrogant person. He's like, he holds himself so high that he's going to be the one that's going to be mourning for Yerushalayim on a regular day. Asyu v'chavshua. They like arrested him. Amar lahu, he said to them, Gavur Rabban, I'm a great person. Don't you know who I am? Amar lei, Mina Yadina, how do we know that you're such a great person? Amar lahu, he said, Iyatun boy minay melsa, ayanay boy minay melsa. Either you ask me a question, or I'll ask you a question, and that's how we'll figure out. I'm a Talmud Chacham. So, Amar lei, they said, Boyat, you asked the question. Guess they didn't even have a question. So Amar lahu, he said to them, Haiman the cuts kufra, someone that cuts down a date palm tree. Actually, it's the young dates. It's not the tree. It's the young dates at a very early stage. But it's not the earliest stage. It's the second stage. So my mishalin, what should such a person pay? Amrulay, they said to him, Shalin to make kufr, they should pay for what that's worth. It says Habi Tamri, why you pay for that, but in the future they're gonna become real dates, and it's gonna be more expensive. So he says, Mishalin to make Tamri. Okay, so they should pay the value of the dates. Amalu, he says to them, but he didn't take dates. Okay, he's playing this back and forth. So Amrulay, they said to him, Emalanat, so why don't you tell us? Amalahu, he said, Beshishim, you evaluate it, Beshishim, together with the property. How much, like, I think it means 60 trees on a property, how much it would be. I think that's what it means. Amrulay, they said, Man Amar Kavasach, how do we know that you're right? Who says like you? Amalahu, Hashmuel Chai, Shmuel's alive, Besdine Kayim, and his Bezdin is there. Shadru Kami the Shmuel, they sent to Shmuel, Amalu Shapu Kamalahu Beshishim. It says he's right. You pay 60, and Shavku, they let him go. Okay, let's try to finish to the Mishnah. Reb Shimon Reb Shimon says that if you ate full fruits, so you pay the full fruits. You actually pay the retail price. My time, what's the reason? This that the Torah says that you have to pay as it is on another field. That you have to pay as it is on the field. You evaluate the field, how much it was worth and how much it's worth. That's only something that still needs the field to continue growing. But these, given like since they don't need the field anymore, you pay as it is, as is in retail. Amar Rapuna Breder of Chia, Amar Rapuna Bar Chia, Amar Yirmiyah Bar Abba. Don Rab Kereb Meir. Rab Paskin like Reb Meir. Upasa Kilchasa Kereb Shimon, and he also Paskin the halacha like Reb Shimon. Don Rab Kereb Meir, the Tanya. Where did he Paskin like Reb Meir? As it says in the Brisa, Kasav L'Rishon V'Leichas Malay. What happened is there's a guy that designated a field for his wife's ksuba. Then he decides to sell that field. So he comes to his wife. He says, "Please sign the document that we're selling the field." She says, "No, she doesn't want to sign it." L'Sheni, so he decides to sell it to someone else. V'Chas Malay, and she signed it. So of the ksubasa, she lost her field. Divrei Reb Meir, that's Reb Meir's view, because she agreed. She was Michael. Rabbi Yehuda says, she's able to say, Nachas Rachas Yisi Labaili. She's saying, I was just doing it because I didn't want my husband to be angry at me. What do you want from me? Okay, so Rav Paskin like Reb Meir. Paskin Reb Shimon. He also Paskin like Reb Shimon, like it says in the Mishnah. Reb Shimon says, Achla Peirs Kemurim, Sham Peirs Kemurim, Im Sasam, Sasayim, Sasayim, that if the animal ate fully ripe fruits, you have to pay for exactly as it is, not on the field, but as it is in retail. So that's what Rav Paskin whether it ate a saw or it ate 2 saw, and that's what it's going to have to pay. Okay, leave it over here. Have a good day, everyone.